Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and let me thank you also for convening this hearing and for your leadership on this issue. Chairman Sullivan is the leading champion for the Coast Guard in the U.S. Senate and also the leading champion for America leading in the Arctic, and I'm grateful for your leadership in both regards.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
I will also note, Admiral, on the question you raised about the shutdown, that shutdown in 2019 was unfortunate. And Senator Sullivan and I together teamed up on legislation to pay the men and women of the Coast Guard and took to the Senate floor trying to get the Senate to adopt it. Unfortunately, a Democratic senator raised an objection and held the men and women of the Coast Guard hostage to that. And so I'm hopeful we don't see a reprise of that in the days and weeks to come. The Arctic Circle has strategic, economic, and military significance for the United States. And I want to thank the Coast Guard for your continued presence in the region, your leadership, working to protect America's interest. I've said for a long time that China is an adversary who would benefit from an American retreat. All across the globe, President Xi and the Chinese Communist Party are investing heavily in the military, as is Russia. In your assessment today, who is the dominant power in the Arctic Circle?
Senator, thanks for the question. From the analysis that we've done, I mean, obviously, if you look at the planet from the north down, looking down at the North Pole, and you can see the extensive shoreline that Russia has, you know that they are a force to be reckoned with there just because of geography. They've got the geography, and they've got the natural resources there. So in the near term, I think Russia is certainly the nation that we should really be paying close attention to. But we cannot ever take our eyes off the ball on China. I think that the behavior they're displaying in the polar regions, not just the Arctic, but the Antarctic, and not just the Alaska Arctic, but over by Greenland as well. They are displaying similar activity following, in my opinion, the analysis I've done, and this is all unclassed, with regards to, you know, they're following the same playbook they followed in the South China Sea and following the places they do everywhere else. They'll get a toehold, start working in the name of science, in the name of other things, and the next thing you know, they are moving forward their agenda there. That answers your question, Senator.
In your assessment, what would be the effect to the United States if we were to cede control of the Arctic to the Russians and the Chinese?
Well, it would be no different than ceding the Gulf of Mexico to somebody else. It's a shore of the United States. It's the approach to the United States, although it is not as accessible as the Gulf of Mexico or the Pacific coast or name your coast. But it's the same sovereignty rules and the same, we have the duty, we in the Coast Guard, and this is what we have the duty to protect it. Now, 30 years ago, when I was a young officer in the service, nobody talked about it because of the multi-year ice had not receded. But now there's access up there that didn't exist. Traffic through the Bering Straits increased, 200% in the last 4 or 5 years. It's not going to replace the Suez Canal anytime soon, but it is growing, and the access is up there. So I would say we should be planning to be able to exert our sovereignty, protect our resources, provide support for those who the access, and these are eco-tourists, these are Americans, a lot of them, or also the folks who are Alaska Natives who live and make their living up there. We need to be the same Coast Guard, I'm speaking from a Coast Guard perspective, for them as I am for any other state in our country.
You said in your opening statement that state actors, as well as non-state actors, are seeking to advance their own interests in the Arctic. What did you mean by non-state actors?
Well, the potential for IUU fishing will exist up there. That's coming. I mean, when the senator and I were in Nome summer before last, we had a NOAA.
And pretend hypothetically there were a senator in the room that didn't know that particular acronym.
Okay, I'm sorry. That's illegal, unregulated, and unreported fishing. That is the scourge. It literally is one of the scourges of the planet. I would say from a maritime perspective, IUU fishing, whether it's happening in the South Pacific, whether it's happening in the Bahamas, or pick a place, off the coast of Africa, off the coast of Somalia, that is one of the most widespread degradation of resources that the planet knows, and it has effects. And so what the senator and I saw last year when we were in Nome, there was a NOAA scientist there, a really bright scientist, and she explained, she drew out a map for us in the gravel of the parking lot of the harbor at Nome, and she explained to us because pollock is the most substantive American fishery. We could probably get arguments on that from other parts of the country, but it is the greatest in capacity, what happens, and that's caught in the Bering Sea. And those pollock are moving north up towards the Arctic. Now, there's a 16-year moratorium on fishing in the Arctic that pretty much everyone agrees who has the capability to fish up there, but they'll be up there. They will be up there, and they will deplete those resources just like they will anywhere else if we let them.
And what resources does the Coast Guard need to combat both state and non-state actors in the Arctic?
The capital assets that we are being provided right now, whether it's polar security cutters, and continue to be able to build out that fleet. Because what happens is, and that's why we call them polar security cutters and not icebreakers per se moving forward, because breaking ice is just a means to an end. The end is to get Coast Guard cutters with Coast Guardsmen on scene to a place where either people need a rescuing or they need arresting. And we do both of those. And so that's the resources we need. And then the aircraft, the communications capability to go with them. But in the short term, as I was telling the committee earlier, I think the operations and sustainment funds are really the long pole in the tent for our service right now.
Thank you, Admiral. And as a closing observation, I'll say I was up this summer in Alaska with Senator Sullivan, and my advice to you is for the Coast Guard to stay utterly agnostic on the malicious lie that Senator Sullivan persists in repeating, which is that Alaska is larger than Texas. And I can tell you, we Texans don't believe the lying maps that are put out, and my advice is for you to stay out of that particular squabble.
Just for your information, not only is it larger, but if you split Alaska in half, Texas would be the third largest state in the country. So and I don't think the map makers are lying, but I'm glad you were up there. And